You don't notice it at first. It doesn't arrive like pain. It doesn't announce itself like tragedy. Mediocrity is quieter than all that. It arrives disguised as calm, as normal, as the steady rhythm of ordinary days. No alarms, no warnings. Just one small decision at a time, one postponed dream, one ignored discomfort, one silent compromise. Then one morning you wake up with no fire, not because you lost something, but because nothing ever forced you to burn. The tragedy of life isn't failure. It's drifting. It's surviving on autopilot. It's becoming so good at enduring okay that you forget what great ever felt like. And what makes this trap so lethal is its silence. There's no signal that you're slipping. No crack in the mirror, no voice screaming, "This isn't who you were meant to be." Only routine, only numbness, only the soft, sweet weight of your own potential, slowly rotting inside you. You think you're safe because nothing's falling apart. You think you're stable because the world hasn't shaken you lately. But stillness is not always peace. Sometimes it's decay. And mediocrity feeds on that stillness, on the kind of comfort that demands nothing, on the kind of days where you feel nothing, on the kind of life where nothing goes wrong, but nothing ever feels right either. You don't need to hit rock bottom to lose yourself. Sometimes you just stop growing. You settle. You cope. You normalize everything that was meant to disturb you, your restlessness, your questions, your hunger for something more. You call it maturity. You call it patience. But it's not. It's resignation. Quiet, obedient resignation. People imagine that mediocrity is for the lazy. But that's not true. Mediocrity often wraps itself around people who are busy, people who work, people who try, but who have slowly lost their direction, lost the sharpness in their thinking, lost the ability to tell the difference between a full schedule and a fulfilled life. And the worst part? No one will warn you. Because you don't look like a failure. You look fine, you smile, you function, you get things done, and the world rewards that. But deep down, there's a hum, a weight, a silence that grows louder the longer you ignore it. It's not depression, it's not crisis, it's something more subtle, something more dangerous. It's the slow erosion of your purpose, the dulling of your instincts, the shrinking of your courage. And unless something shakes you awake, you won't even notice it. That's what this message is for. Not to motivate you, not to entertain you, but to confront the thing you've quietly become. To make you look at the parts of yourself you've allowed to wither. To name the feeling you haven't dared to speak. I'm losing myself, and I don't even know when it started. There is a trap here, one that rewards staying small. That encourages softness. That celebrates avoidance. And it will continue to feed you comfort until you forget the taste of meaning. But you were not built for comfort. You were not meant to live in neutral. You were made to rise. That doesn't mean more effort. It means more clarity, not more noise, but more silence. The right kind of silence. The kind that allows you to hear your soul again. The kind that reminds you of who you were before the world convinced you to settle for less. This is not a warning. It's a mirror. And if you dare to look deeply enough, you might find the exact moment you began slipping. And more importantly, you might find the reason to stop. Now we begin. The invisible ceiling. There is a kind of limitation that doesn't come from outside. It's not imposed by the world. It's not enforced by a law. It's not written anywhere, and yet you live beneath it. You make your choices around it. You shape your identity through it. Not because it's real, but because at some point, someone made you believe it was. It starts early. Before you even know what you're capable of, the world begins to define it for you. You're told what's too much, what's not for people like you, what dreams are realistic and which ones are just fantasy. You're handed a set of limits disguised as advice, warnings dressed up as love. And without noticing, you begin to shrink your vision. Not because you failed, but because you've never dared to fully look up. The most dangerous part of this ceiling is that it's invisible. You don't see it, you feel it. Every time you hesitate before speaking your mind, every time you reject an opportunity before even trying, every time you tell yourself, "That's not who I am," without ever testing if it could be. You feel its weight when you're about to change, when you're close to taking a risk, when something inside you stirs and says, "More." And something louder answers, "Not for you." And so you stay in the same place, not because it's best, but because it's familiar. You live in rooms built by fear, calling it logic. You settle into labels handed to you years ago, not realizing they were meant to be broken. You mistake repetition for truth. You confuse limitation with identity. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." But modern life has made imagination a prison. You don't just suffer fears that haven't happened. You begin to obey them. You stop applying. You stop asking. You stop reaching. You stop dreaming. Not because you're lazy, not because you're weak, but because you've adapted to a life that asks you to be smaller than you are. You've internalized the ceiling, and now you walk with your back slightly bent, your voice slightly softer, your desires slightly edited, just enough to keep you in place, just enough to not disturb the walls around you. Because the moment you start shaking them, people get uncomfortable. And you've been trained, not to rise, but to keep the peace. But what peace is this exactly? The peace of not being criticized, the peace of not being rejected, the peace of not failing because you never tried? That isn't peace. It's quiet desperation. It's a life built on invisible rules. And those rules were never yours. They were programmed into you by culture, by fear, by wounded people passing down their own ceilings because they never broke theirs. What you think is your personality might just be your defense mechanism. What you call humility might be fear. What you call stability might be stagnation. Look closer. You might realize that most of the reasons you give yourself for staying where you are don't hold up when challenged. They vanish like smoke under pressure because they were never yours to begin with. And yet, you defend them. Because identity clings to what is known, even if it's false, even if it hurts, even if it means denying what you were truly made to do. That's the tragedy. The world doesn't even need to oppress you. You've been trained to do it to yourself. The ceiling is not made of brick or stone. It's made of memory, of subtle conditioning, of 1,000 moments where you were told to sit down, calm down, slow down, be grateful, be safe. And it worked. It taught you how to stay in your place. But here's the truth. Your place is not beneath a ceiling. Your place is not in the middle. Your place is not defined by what others can tolerate. Your place is wherever your full potential demands to go. And if that makes others uncomfortable, so be it. That discomfort is not your burden. It is their invitation to rise or their consequence for staying low. You must question every ceiling, every belief that makes you feel smaller, every idea that asks you to be less. Because the moment you stop questioning, you start obeying. And the more you obey, the more you forget who you really are. So ask yourself now, who taught me to stop reaching? Whose fear am I still carrying? Whose voice echoes in my mind when I try to grow? Break it. Not slowly. Not politely, not with apology, but with full force, with clarity, with the quiet violence of truth. Because once you see the ceiling, really see it, it can't control you anymore. And once it breaks, you'll realize the sky was never the limit. Your mind was. The imitation of living. Not everyone is alive just because they breathe. There's a kind of existence that looks like life from the outside. But inside, it's hollow. You see movement, but no momentum. You hear words, but no meaning. You watch people checking boxes, hitting targets, smiling for photos, building routines, and still, nothing in their eyes changes. That spark, the one that only truth can light, stays off. Mediocrity doesn't always feel like suffering. Sometimes it feels like automation. Like waking up and doing exactly what you did yesterday, not because it's right, but because it's rehearsed. You've mastered the motions. You know how to sound inspired, how to appear disciplined, how to wear the mask of purpose. But when the lights go out and the noise fades, you're left alone with a question that refuses to leave. Am I actually living or just playing a part? The world teaches you how to act alive, not how to be. And you follow the script. Get the degree, get the job, hit the metrics, hit the gym, hit the target. But what if you're hitting all the right things and still missing yourself? You imitate ambition. You talk about goals. You build plans. You optimize. You post progress. But deep down, none of it moves you. Not really. You're not pulled forward by something real. You're pushed around by expectation. You're not driven by desire. You're dragged by deadlines. You're not aligned. You're imitating what alignment looks like. There's no rebellion in your blood anymore. Just routine. Just a loop. Just the safety of doing what you've seen others do. Because if it works for them, it should work for you, right? But you forget. Their path wasn't built for your soul. And so the further you follow it, the more distant you feel from yourself. And you wonder why you feel restless even when everything's in place. Why you feel unsatisfied even when nothing's wrong. Why the applause doesn't echo. Why the weekend doesn't refresh you. It's because you're not tired from working hard. You're tired from pretending. Pretending that this is enough. Pretending that this is you. Pretending that life is supposed to feel this dim. But you've never questioned it. Because questioning would require confrontation. And confrontation might shatter the life you've built. Not because it's bad, but because it was never yours. It was borrowed. It was copied. It was modeled after people who may be just as lost as you. There are too many people wearing the costume of progress, busy, focused, structured. And yet, something's off. They're polished but not passionate. Impressive but not alive. Successful but not fulfilled. They're not living. They're performing. They're editing their lives for others to watch while quietly disconnecting from their own experience of it. And here's where mediocrity hides best, inside that performance. Because as long as you look like you're doing well, no one will ask if you're being well. And as long as you're achieving things, no one will question if those achievements even matter to you. You'll keep collecting victories that don't heal you. You'll keep checking boxes that don't belong to you. You'll keep running a race that ends in a place you never chose. The Stoics taught that life isn't about appearing wise. It's about becoming wise. It's not about saying the right things. It's about living the right way. But imitation is louder than wisdom. And in this age, loudness wins. So you imitate those who speak loudest, even if they speak no truth. But silence can't be imitated. And eventually, it finds you. Late at night, in the quiet moments between distractions. When the phone is off and there's no audience to impress, that's when you feel it. That strange, sharp emptiness. The awareness that something essential is missing. That the life you've built doesn't echo back to your soul. That's not failure. That's your clarity waking up. That's the voice of the self you've been silencing. The one that remembers how it used to feel to dream without filters, to move without permission, to want without apology. You don't need more plans. You need presence. You don't need to upgrade your routine. You need to question who created it. You don't need to go faster. You need to ask where you're actually going. This isn't about stopping everything. It's about asking, what part of my life is real? What part is mine? And what part have I built only because I was too afraid to start from nothing? You don't need to destroy your life to reclaim it. You need to stop performing it. Strip it down. Remove the decoration. Let go of the script. Say no to the noise. Then watch what remains. That's your real life. That's your true beginning. If you're still breathing, it's not too late to return to it. When comfort becomes control. Not everything that feels good is good for you. And not everything that brings you relief brings you freedom. That's the paradox of comfort. It gives just enough to keep you from breaking, but never enough to make you rise. You think you're choosing it, but eventually it starts choosing for you. You call it a preference, a rhythm, a lifestyle, but comfort has a mind of its own. And once you let it settle in, it quietly takes command. It begins with rest, needed, deserved, natural. Then it becomes avoidance. At first, you take a break to recharge. Later, you use the break to escape. You start skipping discomfort. You dodge confrontation. You scroll when you should reflect. You soften when you should push. You withdraw when you should act. And you call that balance. But balance without tension is just stagnation. Discomfort sharpens the blade. Comfort dulls it. And yet, you keep reaching for comfort, believing it's a sign of stability. It's not. It's a signal that you've stopped expanding, that your world has shrunk down to what you can control, what you can predict, what doesn't challenge your sense of safety. But safety, when overused, becomes a cage. You'll know it's happening when you stop seeking newness, when the idea of starting something, anything, feels exhausting. When your instinct isn't to try, but to justify why not trying is smarter. When your goals become smaller, not because you're realistic, but because you're scared to stretch. Comfort doesn't just protect you from pain. It protects you from growth, from risk, from effort, from truth. The more you choose it, the more it chooses for you. It selects your habits, your language, your circle, your threshold for change, your reaction to fear. You become governed not by purpose, but by ease. And ease is deceptive. It convinces you that peace means nothing is required of you. But peace without challenge is sedation. And sedation is how people sleep through their entire lives. They never crash, they never fall, they just slowly fade. They lose the urgency that once made their eyes burn. They lose the discomfort that once kept them honest. They lose the will to break the rhythm. Because the rhythm, though dull, is predictable. And predictable feels safe. But it's not safe. It's just numb. And the numbness grows. You stop noticing the low-grade dissatisfaction. You normalize the noise. You stop remembering what it felt like to want something so deeply it kept you awake. You start believing that your muted energy is maturity, that your slow decline is wisdom, that your lack of fight is just contentment. It's not. It's surrender. Quiet, passive surrender to the easiest path, to the smallest version of yourself, to the most convenient lies. Seneca taught that a man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than necessary, but a man who avoids suffering altogether avoids life. Because living demands friction. It requires contrast. It calls you to lean into resistance, not as a punishment, but as a reminder that you're still shaping yourself. Comfort removes that resistance. And once it does, you're no longer sharpening, you're softening. You become manageable, predictable. You stop scaring people with your potential. You stop threatening mediocrity. You fit in, you adapt, you blend. You're easier to love, easier to like, easier to ignore. But deep down, something stirs, something you've pushed below the surface, a faint discomfort with your own softness, a frustration with how easily you let yourself decline. You feel the edge rusting inside you. You sense the quiet insult of a life that no longer demands your strength. And still, you stay. You convince yourself it's better to preserve energy than to waste it on dreams. Better to be stable than to risk disappointment. Better to be comfortable than to be alive. But that's not wisdom. That's decay with a smile on its face. Comfort becomes control when you stop choosing it and start obeying it. When you stop asking what you need and start fearing what might happen if you disrupt what you have. But control is not the same as peace. And safety is not the same as strength. The only real comfort is the kind that follows struggle. The kind that comes after the battle, after the climb, The kind that feels earned, not stolen, not simulated, not performed. Anything else is just sedation in disguise. So ask yourself, what does your comfort cost you? What have you stopped creating, building, challenging, or saying just to keep things easy? And if you were to break that cycle, not later, but now, what version of you would re-emerge? The answer isn't found in more rest. It's found in more courage. The addiction to almost. There's a strange comfort in being close to changing your life, close to starting the project, close to fixing what's broken, close to becoming the person you keep imagining. Almost gives you the illusion of progress without the burden of transformation. It lets you feel the thrill of possibility without facing the risk of failure. It keeps your mind warm with potential while your life stays cold with inaction. And over time, that closeness becomes addictive. People don't usually stay stuck because they have nothing. They stay stuck because they have just enough. Enough ideas, enough talent, enough glimpses of what their life could look like, enough evidence that they could be more if they really tried. And that little bit is what traps them. It convinces them that tomorrow is always available, that there's no urgency to rise today because they're already so close. But almost is the most elegant form of self-sabotage. You keep rewriting plans instead of living them. You keep imagining the outcome instead of pursuing it. You keep preparing, adjusting, refining, researching, waiting for perfect timing, waiting for motivation, waiting for certainty. And the waiting becomes a lifestyle, a quiet sedative, a way of staying near the edge without ever taking the step. The mind loves almost because it feels productive. It feels like movement. You brainstorm, you organize, you buy the tools, you download the apps, you create the schedule, you watch the tutorials. You talk about change so convincingly that even you start to believe it. But none of it demands courage. None of it demands vulnerability. None of it demands sacrifice. It's activity without transformation, effort without consequence. And in that space, mediocrity thrives. You tell yourself the door is right there, and that's true. But you never walk through it. You stand beside it long enough that you begin to mistake proximity for progress. And years pass like that. You accumulate half-finished projects, half-lived dreams, half-grown potential. Your life becomes a collection of almosts, things that could have been extraordinary if you had endured even a small dose of discomfort. You don't fear failure as much as you fear the final reveal. The moment you discover whether you are who you think you could be. As long as you remain in almost, your potential is untouched, perfect, untested, safe. But the moment you take action, you risk confronting the truth. And the truth is what you've been avoiding. Because truth demands accountability. It demands the death of the version of you that survives only in imagination. That version has accompanied you for years. The better self you plan to become. The self with more discipline, more courage, more clarity. You keep it alive by never acting. Because if you act, you destroy the fantasy. And fantasies are easier to keep alive than reality. But a life built on almost is not a life. It's a preview, a loop of indefinite rehearsals where the curtain never rises. You become the person who almost changed, almost started, almost committed, almost evolved, until almost becomes your identity. And you don't even notice it happening. You start protecting almost. You defend your plans. You talk about your vision. You polish ideas that should have been executed long ago. You avoid anyone who challenges your comfort. You surround yourself with people who also live in almost because their presence makes your stagnation feel normal. But nothing about almost is normal. It's a silent theft. It steals your fire in slow doses. It replaces your hunger with fantasy. It keeps you emotionally fed just enough to survive, but never enough to thrive. And by the time you realize it, you've spent years circling the edge of a life you were meant to live fully. The Stoics warned about the cost of delay. Seneca said that while we waste time hesitating, life accelerates. And that's the cruelty of almost. It feels like waiting, but it's actually losing. Losing hours, losing strength, losing possibility, losing the chance to discover what's on the other side of the hesitation. If you're honest, you already know the truth. You've known it for a long time. You don't need more preparation. You don't need more information. You don't need better timing. You need the courage to step into the unknown, to trade comfort for clarity, to choose reality over fantasy, to stop rehearsing a life you haven't dared to live. The addiction to almost ends when you decide that your future deserves more than your hesitation, when you stop protecting potential and start expressing it. When you say not someday but now, that's the moment almost dies and you come alive. The cost of a numb identity. You don't lose yourself all at once. There's no announcement, no breaking point. You just start to feel less alive, less certain, less hungry. At first, it's subtle. You become quieter in your thoughts. You stop pushing. You say yes to things that don't light you up. You say no to things that might. And then, over time, something deeper begins to slip. The part of you that once cared about excellence, about truth, about the edge of your potential, begins to dim. Not because life took it, but because you stopped protecting it. That's the real cost of mediocrity. Not the money you don't earn, not the title you don't get, not the goal you don't reach. It's the quiet hollowing of who you are, a slow removal of sharpness, of passion, of essence. It doesn't make you miserable, it makes you neutral. It doesn't break you. It just smooths over your soul until you no longer remember what it meant to be fully awake inside your own skin. You become harder to recognize, not to others, but to yourself. You look in the mirror and see a face that performs well enough, smiles when expected, responds when needed, functions, but the spark behind the eyes has cooled. Not out of despair, but out of detachment. That's the danger. You're not failing visibly. You're fading silently. There's a moment in life where the question is no longer, what do I want to be? It becomes, what part of me have I already lost? And few people stop long enough to ask that. We assume identity is fixed, that we are who we are. But identity is elastic. It's shaped by repetition, by language, by what we tolerate and what we avoid. Every small compromise carves into it. Every ignored instinct dulls it. Every day lived without intention rewrites it in subtle ways, until the self you carry now is just a watered-down echo of the self you were meant to become. And the worst part? You get used to it. You normalize the gap between who you are and who you feel you could be. You call it maturity. You call it being realistic. You begin to celebrate stability over depth, numbness over pain, convenience over authenticity. And slowly, you build a life that fits the version of you that settled, the version that plays safe, the version that forgot how to care deeply because caring would hurt too much. But there's a fracture in that performance, a whisper that cuts through the silence, a quiet unrest that shows up in strange moments. When you watch someone speak with fire and feel something ache, when you see someone take a risk and feel a strange resentment, when you hear your own voice and wonder why it sounds so small, that's the soul remembering. That's the original self trying to reach you. The Stoics taught that the true self cannot be harmed by external chaos, only by internal decay. That means the world cannot strip your purpose unless you allow it. But that allowance is exactly what happens when you drift. When you stop asking questions, when you confuse feeling nothing with being fine. Numbness is not peace, it's not protection, it's not clarity. It's the side effect of avoidance of truth, of responsibility, of the full weight of your own power, because power requires presence, and presence means you can't hide. You can't coast. You can't let the days pass without consequence. When you lose that, you become easy to control, not by people, but by patterns. You become programmable, predictable, unmoved. You stop surprising yourself. You stop chasing what scares you. You stop needing transformation because you've forgotten how much of you has already been surrendered. And the surrender continues in silence. Every time you tolerate what drains you, every time you ignore what calls to you, every time you choose quiet comfort over loud truth, you are not just avoiding discomfort. You are slowly redrawing your identity into something smaller, duller, safer. But identity, at its root, is not something to protect. It's something to renew. If your days don't challenge you, you're not growing. If your choices don't stretch you, you're not evolving. If your thoughts don't disturb you, you're not waking up. And if your identity feels numb, it's not because you're broken. It's because your soul is waiting for you to come back and pick it up again. The cost of mediocrity isn't seen in what the world says about you. It's measured in how much of yourself you no longer recognize, and how long you're willing to live like that. The lies you tell yourself to sleep. There's no need for someone to lie to you if you've already learned how to do it yourself. No need for the world to convince you to shrink if your own mind does it better. That's the brilliance of mediocrity. It doesn't need to force you. It just needs to persuade you gently over time, until you begin to believe that the quiet life you settled for is the one you always wanted. You don't lie to yourself with malice. You do it for peace, to avoid the fracture between who you are and who you could be. To make the stillness feel earned, to soften the regret. You tell yourself stories that let you sleep. But comfort bought with deception is not rest, it's sedation. And every night you sink into those narratives, something honest in you dies a little more. You tell yourself you're waiting for the right time, that once things calm down, you'll begin. That you just need clarity, that you're being strategic, that you're being patient. But time doesn't wait. It never has. And clarity doesn't come from more waiting. It comes from movement, from friction, from choosing before you're ready. The lie is that life will give you a signal. It won't. You give it to yourself. Or you stay stuck in preparation disguised as purpose. You tell yourself you're being responsible, that you can't risk too much, that others depend on you, that it's noble to sacrifice your dreams for the safety of the structure you've built. But that's not always sacrifice. Sometimes it's fear wearing a mask of maturity. Sometimes it's just the most acceptable way to abandon yourself, and the world will applaud you for it. They will call you wise, grounded, stable. But applause doesn't mean truth. Sometimes it just means others want to see you stay where they are. You tell yourself you're not the type of person who needs more, that you're not ambitious, that you've grown beyond the desire for greatness. But look deeper. Look at your restlessness, at the tension in your chest when you imagine doing something extraordinary, at the jealousy that shows up when someone else does. If you didn't want more, you wouldn't feel that sting. You've buried it. But buried things don't disappear. They just rot underground and poison everything above it. You tell yourself you're tired, and you are. But maybe not in the way you think. Maybe you're not tired from doing too much. Maybe you're tired from doing too little that actually matters. Maybe your exhaustion comes not from activity, but from meaninglessness, from repetition, from performing stability while your soul quietly begs for movement. And when the pressure builds, you numb it with screens, with noise, with people who expect nothing real from you, with routines that feel safe because they require no confrontation. You curate a version of yourself that functions just enough to avoid questions. And when the ache comes, the one that says, "This isn't it," you drown it in productivity, in small tasks, in short-term goals that feel like progress but never touch your core. These lies are elegant, polished, socially accepted, They sound like wisdom, like restraint. But they are cages, and the longer you believe them, the stronger they become. Until one day, they don't sound like lies at all. They sound like you. And that's the deepest cost, when you can no longer tell the difference between your voice and your fear. The Stoics weren't afraid of pain. They were afraid of delusion. They trained for clarity. They stripped away false comforts because they knew the real danger was living a life that looked stable but was built on illusions. The soft kind, the beautiful kind, the kind that keep you asleep. So ask yourself, what story are you telling yourself right now to avoid the truth? What version of your identity exists solely to protect your comfort? What have you labeled as wisdom that might in fact be fear? This is not about guilt. It's about awakening. You cannot change what you refuse to name, and you cannot rise while feeding lies to the part of you that knows better. The truth is still in there, buried beneath the excuses, beneath the caution, beneath the perfectly reasonable stories that have slowly replaced your instinct. It's waiting, patient, undamaged, quiet, and it's not angry, it's not resentful, it's simply ready. You don't need to believe every thought you've rehearsed. You don't need to defend the identity that got you here. You're allowed to start over, not from zero, but from honesty. Let the lies go, not because they were evil, but because they kept you small. You've outgrown them. You just forgot how to say so. The soul's quiet revolt. It never yells. It doesn't slam doors. It doesn't demand anything. The soul, when it revolts, does so in silence, in strange sensations you can't quite name, in discomfort that has no clear source, in a tension that wraps itself around your chest for no visible reason. You blame stress, you blame fatigue, but deep down, you know. That feeling is not from the outside. It's something inside you knocking. You've kept it buried, covered by habits, smothered by explanations, delayed by good intentions. It waited quietly while you played your part, while you optimized, adjusted, compromised. But the soul doesn't forget. It keeps a record of every truth you refused, of every part of yourself you silenced to fit into something smaller. And eventually, it rises, not to destroy, but to restore. The revolt begins in stillness, when you sit alone and nothing distracts you. When the noise settles and you hear a sound you hadn't noticed in years. Your own mind, unfiltered. Not the one you use for tasks, the one underneath. The original one. The one that once dreamed wildly and believed you were meant for more than just survival. And that mind isn't satisfied. Not with your schedule, not with your salary, not with your rehearsed calm. It wants something raw, something real, something that isn't measured in metrics but in meaning. And it won't be reasoned with. You can't negotiate with your soul. You can only listen or betray it. That betrayal is what you've done for years. Each time you said, "I'm fine," when you weren't. Each time you stayed when you knew you should leave. Each time you lowered your standards to match your surroundings. And for a while it worked. You adapted. You got good at functioning under pressure. You got good at hiding your unrest. You got good at being numb. But the soul can't stay buried forever. Its revolt is not dramatic. It's gradual. A slow detachment from things that used to excite you. A sharp intolerance for conversations that lack substance. A quiet dread before each day, even when nothing is wrong. A longing for something you can't name. That's not depression. That's not boredom. That's truth, stirring. You've tried to silence it with routine, with ambition, with distractions dressed as discipline, but it keeps returning, in moments you can't control. When the music hits the wrong note, when someone asks you a real question, when a memory you forgot flashes back, sharper than expected, and suddenly, you're face to face with yourself again. This revolt doesn't ask you to quit your life. It asks you to remember who built it, and whether that builder was honest, whether the foundation was purpose or fear, whether the choices came from conviction or from the need to not disappoint anyone, whether the life you have is yours or just the one that demanded the least resistance. The Stoics spoke of living in accordance with nature, not external nature, but your own, your internal order, your design, your principle. When you betray that, you fragment. You can function, yes, but function is not fulfillment. Productivity is not presence. Success is not peace. And eventually, the part of you that knows the difference begins to resist. That resistance is sacred. It's not failure. It's not weakness. It's not a flaw to fix. It's a signal. It's the alarm that says, you have been gone too long. You've wandered too far from what is essential. You've tried too hard to be acceptable. And now the part of you that never changed is ready to come back. Not to fight, but to reclaim. And you'll feel it before you see it. In the way you start questioning things you used to accept. In the way you no longer tolerate shallowness. In the way you start craving quiet over validation. In the way you begin longing not for more, but for real. That's the soul's quiet revolt. It won't demand a revolution. It will begin with a whisper, with a pause, with a shift. But it will be unrelenting. And if you ignore it long enough, it will break you. Not out of punishment, but out of mercy. Because a life spent betraying the truth of who you are is not a life worth preserving. So stop asking what's wrong with you. Nothing is wrong. Something is waking. Something ancient. Something honest. Something tired of being buried under your performance. Let it rise. You've survived long enough. Now it's time to return. The end of permission. You've waited long enough. Waited for the right time, for the right words, for the right signal. You told yourself it would become obvious one day, that something would click, that someone would see you, that your doubts would fade, that your fear would shrink, that you would feel ready. But readiness never came. And now the truth stands in front of you, quiet and unflinching. It was never about being ready. It was about deciding. Everything in your life that matters waits behind a door labeled, "No one is coming." No one is coming to validate you, to choose you, to rescue you from your own potential. No one will appear with a sign that says, "Now is the time." You will die still waiting if you don't realize this. The permission you've been waiting for is not external. It never was. You've spent too many years asking the world if it's okay to become who you are, softening your truth so it doesn't offend, hiding your hunger so it doesn't intimidate, editing your dreams so they fit into other people's comfort. You've shrunk your flame out of politeness, out of fear, out of guilt. And the result? You've survived, but you haven't lived. And that's the final trap of mediocrity. It rewards your obedience. It makes your compliance feel noble. It builds a quiet prison and hands you the keys, but trains you never to use them. It tells you to be grateful, to stay grounded, to be realistic. But realistic is often just code for forgettable. And you were never meant to be forgettable. You don't need to burn bridges. You don't need to explain. You don't need to wait until the stars align. You just need to stop asking. Stop seeking applause before you speak your truth. Stop waiting for a green light before you take the road. Stop negotiating with fear as if it holds any authority over who you get to become. You already know what to do. You already feel the tension between who you are and what you're allowing. And you already know that if you don't change, nothing else will. So the question is no longer, if you'll move. It's when you'll stop delaying what has already begun inside you. The Stoics never asked for permission to live with purpose. They didn't need permission to seek virtue. They didn't wait for the Senate to approve their clarity. Marcus Aurelius, facing war and sickness and betrayal, still chose to rise, not because it was easy, but because it was right, and no one had to tell him that. He decided. You must do the same. You are not here to entertain others with your potential. You are not here to make people comfortable with your silence. You are not here to decorate the world with your restraint. You are here to become. Not someday. Not once everything is in order, but now. And yes, it might make people uncomfortable. Your change might reveal their stagnation. Your fire might expose their coldness. Your movement might disturb the rhythm they built to stay safe. That's not your concern. You weren't made to blend in. You weren't born to echo. You are here to disrupt, to ignite, to remind the world that comfort is not the final form of peace. Clarity is. The final lie is that you need to wait, that you need more time, that you need someone to nod at you and say, yes, you're ready. That moment will not come. The nod must come from within, and it only comes when you stop betraying what you know deep down, that you are overdue for your own emergence. So don't just rise quietly, rise completely. Step out of the illusion, step out of the slow drift, step out of the narrative that told you to shrink for safety. Burn it, not to destroy, but to illuminate, so others may see what it looks like to stop waiting. You are not asking anymore. You are choosing. This is the end of permission and the beginning of everything else. If this message stirred something in you, let it echo beyond this moment. Say it out loud in the comments. Let someone else find the clarity they've been denying. And if you're ready to keep walking this path, subscribe. Not just to this channel, but to the version of you that no longer waits to be chosen.